And to be fair, the version that we saw is like the super old, all the versions out there are old, but there is one that is in color. I think we talked about it. It has a disco soundtrack, and maybe that for the kids, for the Gen Zs watching this, might be the version for you to check out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try and make that into a 30-second TikTok video. Hello, welcome back to Across the Pond, episode number 6. With me, James in the UK, and you,
Geoff in Canada. Yep.
It's like if Britain and America had a baby.
Yep. We would have said Europe and America had a baby. Actually,
But
no,
now
it's Europe and North America had a baby. You have to put the North on it because right now I just want distance from anything American. But yeah.
Traveling with Canadians is the best because within 30 seconds of them meeting someone new, they're like, I'm Canadian, all right? Get it? Well, I've got a giant Canada flag on my backpack. This week we are watching a 1927 classic by Fritz Lang. It's a science fiction film called Metropolis.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on to your bums, hats and horses because here's a clip and then we'll get into it and there'll be spoilers and there'll be information and there'll be insane reviews.
Banter. Welcome back. That was the clip. So I think now we're getting into spoilers and we have to talk about the actual plot. And last time you had me do the plot for Battleship Potemkin. I struggled through it. I imploded. You came to my rescue. I'm going to flip the script. You are going to have to give us the plot of Metropolis. Go.
So Metropolis is a film set in the future, 2026. That's right, we're nearly there, folks. It is a film about a city called Metropolis, a massive city, massive buildings, kind of Art Deco, similar to New York, but on speed. There's flying cars, there's trains, there's cars. It's crazy in the future. There's an upstairs, downstairs feel to the film. At the top, you've got the bourgeoisie having a great life, partying, doing the sex, having some drinks, loving life. Below that is a massive factory full of machines, all controlled by workers. And the plot of the film essentially is the relationship between the workers underground, who have a pretty terrible life, and the people on the top of the service who have a great life. And in between that are the main characters. And they are our main male protagonist is someone called Frida. And the main female protagonist is someone called Maria, and their story intertwines, becomes a bit of a love story between the two. And essentially, Freda is the son of the man who's the authoritarian ruler of the city, controls the city. And essentially, he realizes that the way the city runs, the workers underneath not having any power and the people on top having such power doesn't work for him. He kind of bands together with the workers, and the Maria character is kind of a savior figure who is saying we can work together with the people on top, we can all come together and we can be kind of one big happy family. Now, the confusing part on the side of that is there's a whole kind of more of a science fiction aspect to it, where there is a character who's a bit like a Frankenstein character called Rotwang who creates a clone. And that clone is asked by the authoritarian leader of the city to look like Maria, to kind of get involved and stop any uprisings before they happen. The story moves through the uprising of the workers, including Maria the clone, who sort of creates all this disturbance, but actually behind it, Rotwang wants to take over the city. In the end, Rotwang is killed. Maria the clone is killed, but Maria the good and Frida end up together, and everyone is united because, as the film says, you have Hans, who are the workers, and you have the head, who are the bourgeoisie, which is pretty offensive, and you have the heart, who is the Frida character, and they all come together. It is a bit of a mental plot when you describe it, but actually the film is relatively simple, and I think when it was released in 27 was actually accused of being a very simple and naive plot. H.G. Wells called it silly. There you go.
Yeah, you did a great job. I think it's not so much that the plot is simple or whatever. I know that we've been doing a lot of talking today. I guess it's the message, right, that was kind of naive and simple, which is, the mediator, we all need to get along. Like, here you have this incredibly rich and dense visual language, and yet at the core of this film is a message that's kind of like, I don't know, children's story time level of depth. But there's also a lot of other stuff, like I was saying earlier, that we didn't get to talk about. There's like biblical imagery and like fever dreams and dance sequences. There's a lot going on. So I think we'll talk about whether we recommend it or not and what we give it, but it's something that, just to get like, don't watch this without having seen the film. You should. There's some sequences in the film that you just need to see that you're not going to get from our plot or whatever. You just kind of have to see to believe. And I think that's where the movie's strengths are, right? Is the visuals, and also the sonic aspect of the film. The score is just as powerful as the visuals. And they work really well together. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, as you saw in the clip, it's a silent film, so it's interspersed with kind of subtitles telling you kind of what's going on. But visually, it's pretty amazing, I think, especially it's from 1927. So yeah, I think some of the sets were incredible as well. There's some scenes of the factory filling up with water, with the possibility of hundreds of children drowning, and they're saved by the main characters. But that set in itself was quite amazing, almost a bit like the Titanic visuals of everything filling up and people trying to escape, but done in 27. So it's kind of mind-boggling, the amount of effort that's gone into this film, I think.
And I think the amount of effort that's gone into the film by the actors too, the kind of the physicality of the performances is something that you just cannot wrap your head around, because it wouldn't exist today because of unions. You see people getting their hair pulled, getting trampled on in, I think, like you said, freezing cold water, right, on purpose to kind of heighten the anxiety of the actors. You see these insane dance sequences and this choreography of the people who are like literally cogs in the machines. Like, it's very obvious that they are the things you stick in the machine. There's one point I think Maria, or I can't remember now, but someone says like, are we not the blood of the machine, the this and the that? Like, they're represented in that way, and the amount of like physical strength and that goes not just into like turning a widget to be a machine or whatever, but like there's this one scene where Frieder's looking for Maria in this very Tim Burton-esque kind of like lair of the evil Frankenstein dude, Rotwang, and the doors are closing and he has to run from one side, get back to the other, and like stretch himself because he can't push hard enough and then go back. Like, it's a lot that was asked of these actors, and I think that in and of itself is pretty special to watch.
I think we have to both, we both will talk about this. It's a long run time. I think, and there's also multiple versions of this film. So, we don't know if we've seen the exact same version of each other. We both got our versions from different places, but, the original film was believed to be too long. It was then shortened for cinema goers, and then over the decades, it's kind of gone in and out of favor. It's had updates, with new scores, including Freddie Mercury. And who was the other person you said previously?
Freddie Mercury is it's Giorgio Moroder, who is this kind of, he did I Feel Love with, can't remember her name now, but just basically it has a 70s 80s disco soundtrack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think the original version was found in Argentina in the 2000s and mixed with stuff from New Zealand, and they made a big the ultimate edit as much as they could. So we don't know if we've seen the same versions, but I think both of us have sat and watched it for 2.5 hours. And I would say, considering the messaging, it is too long for what it is, even though it's visually pretty stunning to watch.
And the other thing that makes it really long is just how long it takes characters to react to new information. They almost, and this could have been, I haven't seen enough silent films, this could have been just the way it was, but they would just really kind of sit there and stew in anger or happiness or sadness or confusion for way too long. And the other thing that you pointed out, that sometimes there would be speaking on screen and you'd be like, oh, okay, I'm going to hang around to see what's been said. And a card will not show, a card, with the text won't show up. And then sometimes it will. So it became kind of exhausting to pay attention, only to find out that you wouldn't be given the context for that conversation. And then sometimes you would. So it was a weird kind of viewing experience. But again, there was always something dazzling on screen and always a lot of music to kind of keep the brain active. But it was a slog.
I always wonder what they're saying in those, because obviously it's silent. So they could be like, yeah, fuck you. Yeah, fuck you. Fuck you. Yeah, fuck you. And then they just put up a card and it says, I love you at the bottom of it. It could be anything. Really.
It could be anything.
It's a film of messages. I think it's got multiple messages. I think the science fiction element kind of connects into the messaging in a strange way. The Frankenstein figure is kind of an odd outlier and actually is kind of vitally important to the plot, but then doesn't really play a major role in most of the film. Really, I wouldn't say. And this character creates a robot, a clone. Well, it's a robot who it can be cloned into anybody. So the leader of the Metropolis says, I want this to be like Maria. And he creates Maria too. And that's why Brigitte Helm, who plays Maria, has a pretty good job on her hands because she has to play two characters. One who's kind of a bit a clone who's creating problems all over the place, and then the actual character who's a very good character. I think she was really good in the film out of all the characters, of all the cast that were in it.
Yeah, I did laugh. I was like grinning and smirking whenever Maria 2 was on screen because she plays the part with like it, not even like as a robot. She just like her neck is kind of crooked and like one of her eyes doesn't close all the way and the other one's super open. Like it's very, you kind of can't take your eyes off of her. And when she's moving and dancing or trying to like whip up the crowd to get them to go do something, she's in this really awkward kind of state and pose. And there's also another dance sequence which is just bonkers that I was genuinely just like laughing at how insane everything was.
What is the message? It's definitely got a communist feel to it.
Yep.
It's also kind of got very biblical feels running through it.
I think there's something about like the susceptibility of the masses, to be kind of tricked. There's some kind of angle about that. Like I can't help but see parallels between what's happening now in the movie of just people like, false prophets and liars and a big fat lie motivating bad behavior. And so there's a little bit of that, you know what I mean? In there as well. So I did see some kind of like, not media literacy, but like, I don't know, be aware, be critical, be like, think for yourself, don't get whipped up, but also how frail and fragile we all are to like strong men and strong women and that kind of stuff. So
the only thing I was going to say was the robot clone that appears. I have never seen Metropolis. So I saw that and I said, I was like, oh, look, it's C-3PO. And obviously it turns out that George Lucas had based C-3PO or his look. Is C-3PO gender specific? Is it a he?
I think It's a really good question to ask because I don't know if in your version of Metropolis you notice this, but in the cards, sometimes they would refer to the robot as he, and then sometimes they would refer to it as she. If they refer to it as he, it definitely has like some boobs that would suggest female, but they kind of flipped around with the gender of the robot a lot to the point where Maddie and I weren't sure if it was supposed to be on purpose a woman or a man.
Right.
But C3PO, I think, is supposed to be a dude. I think. I don't know though. You're the Star Wars expert, so you'd be the genitalia authority.
I think also this is probably people who like Star Wars asking way too many questions about what is essentially a fun science fiction film.
Right.
People think about the canon of Star Wars. I was once down a rabbit hole in YouTube. I was watching this isn't about Star Wars, about Star Trek.
It was a whole ISIS video thread that he was on. He used to email me about it.
I was watching this video on YouTube, and it was like a 20-minute in-depth video on the size of the Starship Enterprise. And this guy had like modeled the Jean-Luc Picard stuff, and he was like talking about the room sizes and how many people could fit in a room. And I watched it for about 7 minutes, and I had to pause the video, and I just said to myself, I said, James, look, the Starship Enterprise doesn't exist. Like it's not a real thing, and you need to stop spending time watching something which is just it's a giant waste of time. But anyway, I saw this robot and I thought that's C3PO. Obviously, George Lucas had taken the ideas from Metropolis, and that's where C3PO came from.
Yeah.
And I think Janelle Monáe also took loads of the plot and ideas from it in a couple of her albums. And I think a load of other people have referenced it over almost 100 years, not miles away from it being 100 years that it was made.
I think I mentioned this before. Yeah, so we have Star Wars as the sexless robot. We have, to me, the scene with the doors opening and closing, I thought was very Tim Burton. I thought the cityscapes and skylines were very Blade Runner or Blade Runner-y, or like every other science fiction film. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was kind of ahead of its time. I'm sure there's been a ton of movies that have emulated the machines being what they are and everything. I just can't think right now. Maybe like The Wizard of Oz might be a nice parallel between Metropolis and the way that those set pieces were designed, like faces inside of structures and things like that. But yeah, it's visually dazzling for sure.
And there's lots of stuff in there. I mean, at one point there's a video conference where the city leader calls up a guy who's in the main room of the factory, and that was kind of crazy that it's 1927, and they obviously people like the idea of having a video conference, but the fact that they could even do it technically in that time,
yeah,
and sort of project onto the wall and all that kind of stuff.
This is one of the weaknesses that you pointed out earlier when we definitely didn't film this the first time. Is it, we have this super hyper futuristic tech, a FaceTime call essentially in the 1920s. And yet we still have people who have to match up the hand of a giant clock with like the blinking of an Edison bulb. You know what I mean? Like this super mechanical thing mixed with this. Maybe they saved the best technology for the city leaders, or I'm not really sure. But it was this weird juxtaposition of like super old, everything runs on steam. And then like, oh, I'm going to press a button and like make a call to someone. And so.
So what did you think overall, and then give it a score out of 10?
So it was too long. It was fascinating visually. It needs to be seen. And these are all things I would say to someone else as I would encourage them to go see this film. Go watch it. It's going to be a little long, but if you like movies and you like science fiction, this is one that all of your favorite, B to Star Wars movie level of director has seen and been influenced by. So be a part of that and go see Metropolis so you can be a part of that kind of like experience. Everyone has seen it that makes movies that you love. So go be a part of that for sure. I would definitely, I'd be around, I'd say like a 7. I think this movie is at the higher end of the stuff that you and I have seen. And so for all its faults, it would get a 7 from me. What about you? Would you recommend it to somebody else? And what would you give it out of 10?
Yeah, I think I definitely recommend it to people. I'd put a caveat on the runtime and just say, look, get through it. Because the visuals are really, really cool. Some of the ideas are quite interesting, although I'm not sure it really goes anywhere in the end. A bit like our friend Citizen Kane. I was kind of amazed how boring the ending was, and I think by this one you could see it coming. So I don't think that's super exciting, but I think visually it's amazing to watch, and I think there's some really interesting things going on in there. So yeah, for me, definitely, I would have a watch. A good film. And out of 10, sorry, it's a terrible review of it, isn't it? Good film. Thanks very much. Out of 10, I'd probably give it a 6.5 to 7, in that kind of medium of area.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've reviewed it, we have recommended it, we have scored it. What are we going to talk about next time?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You may not have heard of this. I'm in film. Remember, I'm in it. I'm thinking about it all the time. I'm looking at it. I'm reading about it. Occasionally, I watch one as well. There's a guy called Alfred Hitchcock, and he was a bit of a big deal. So you may not know much about him, but we're going to watch his film Vertigo.
Love it.
So we're going to watch that next time, and in a couple of months you'll get that video too. Bang for your buck. Bang for your buck.
See you at the next one, guys.
See you later. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.